or the thing that makes it the interface between it and the canyon.
He's going to get back to this in 5 chapters from now. Now he's talking about how the Kalim received the Ur. As I mentioned in the beginning here, right now the next 2 chapters is all about the inner and outer part of the Keli, and then he's going to go conclude that the inner part of the Keli receives the Ur, is what receives is the main part that interfaces with the Ur. And then he's going to discuss the Ur more. ומה ששססים היודהו שאיכזים בחיצייניס הכלי ושסים. So there's another component. It's not that it's holding the wine, is that you drink it. But you drink from it by grasping it on the outside. So you grasp the keli like this. So this here inside is the inside of the keli. The main thing is holding the containings. We grasp it on the outside, and now you drink it. That's already the chutzenis of the keli. Shezeh ein atzmus hakeli rak mashu shepreyelos chutz la'atzmus. That's not the essence of the container, it's what it affects outside of it. Remember, you can qualify in saying, even though the purpose of holding it is for you to be able to drink it, but still there's 2 parts to it, especially the way it is in Ruchnis. But we'll get to that. That's what he's asking now. Even though the general purpose of the container is to drink from it, nevertheless, if there was no inside to hold it, in other words, to take it and drink it from the bottle, that's not appropriate. To just some other way, there's no other way. So you have to have, in order to drink it, you have to have a container that has a purpose to contain it first. And then you're able to drink it. Okay. So the container, in other words, breaks into 2 parts. In the keli itself, the inside that receives, that's the essence of the container. From the point of view of the container, remember, we're not talking from the point of view of the gavra, of the person. The person is interested in drinking. But what is the purpose of building a container? Why did we build a cup? Why do you build a goblet? You build a goblet in order to be able to hold the wine that you can then drink it. I'm sorry. And this is also an example for above. Just remember, this is an example for what's Maila. Mashi b'chins keli lekabala, that is a keli to receive. Lekabel b'techa se'er, to receive within it energy. U'lamaila adayim b'chins hashpa v'gil l'chutz la'atzmusa. You see, in the example down on earth, a physical example, it's harder to relate to, because it seems like almost like splitting hairs. I mean, a cup is a cup. You hold the cup and then you drink it. But remember, when you really break it down before the cup was created, the engineering room, there is a big distinction. How you build a cup. So especially Lamaila makes much more difference because there are 2 stages. Remember, it didn't first start with a cup. It started with a plan. God wanted the air to have a place to be contained. And then that container would transmit. See, down here we immediately think in the terms of its function. We don't think in terms of what is the purpose of a cup, per se. But when you break it down, it really is 2 steps. And as I said, and Lamaila above, it's even clearer the distinction.
But doesn't that contradict the idea of Soif Maisa the Machshava Tchilas? And that would seem to lead us to believe that Chetzainius, in a sense, is more important than the Pneumius.
That's very, as far as purpose goes. But remember, you're still calling it Soif Maisa. You're not calling it Tchilas Maisa. It means it's the end and the result. Remember, here the point is how the container meets the energy. And it doesn't meet at the Soif Maisa, it meets at the beginning of it.
Right.
So, Soif Maisa Machshav Tchil is more about purpose. The lowest of all worlds is where the Kavanah is, but it's not the place that is most spiritual. So he's talking more about the spirituality of the container. Where the container meets light, it's much more in the inner part. The goal will be to bring it to the outer and also
contained in the inner.
Right, absolutely.
Both. You need
right,
both.
Exactly.
But
right now he's talking about how it, like technically speaking, though he doesn't say it, I don't have examples for it, but I'm just thinking of an example. You could have a cup, there is an example. The Gemara talks about the daughter of the king, when she said to him, why you learn Torah and all that wisdom, and it's in such an ugly container. She says, your father puts wine into earthen flasks. Why doesn't he put it into gold and silver? So she suggested to her father, and they put it in, and it turns into vinegar. And then when the king asked his daughter, why did you do that? She said, that's what he told me to do, So in other words, the point is, for example, you can have the outer level of the container to be made out of, let's say, even gold. But if the inside was gold, the wine will spoil at some point. It has to be a barrel. So in other words, even though the purpose of the barrel is to hold the wine for later to be used, but the inner part of the container has to be more refined than the outer part, in order to be conducive to what it's containing. Like you said before with the psila, with the wick. So he doesn't say this here, maybe he says it later, I don't recall. I don't think he does. Does he? But that would be really a very good way, I think, to understand what he's saying here. So in other words, so in a cup you don't really see it, because the outer and inner, this could have been outer, this could have been inner. But if it was, let's say, a proper cup, a proper, a cup may not be a good example, a barrel would be a better example, because a barrel needs to hold the wine for a while. So although the whole purpose, why are you holding wine? Not just to hold it, to use it. But the container, especially the inner part, has to be very conducive to the property. It has to have the properties that will preserve wine. So that would be a perfect example how the pnimius and chensenis are really different. And they play different roles. So bottom line is that there's two parts. One's role is to receive, and the other is to transmit. The keli be'esem, the definition of keli, if you want to say what is a keli's purpose, the keli itself, the essence of the keli is to contain, is to hold. If you want to talk about the function of the keli, it may be more important the function than the purpose, than the essence, but the function is the outer part, how it transmits further out. Then I lift the cup of salvations, redemptions. So far, the haba high case is nagidu borcharon. Okay. Then this cup you say brachas, you recite blessings. The inun Yeshuas de le'ela, that draw down from the higher Yeshuas, from the higher levels of redemptions, the higher brachas, the higher salvations. V'hu notilon, v'kovishlan, l'gabei v'snatet tamon. Who notilon, what we said, who notilon, he receives them, v'kneshlan, and gathers them, v'snatet tamon, and protects them within himself. Preserves, protects, okay, preserves. Masha Amr v'konishlan, l'gabei zeh b'chinas primis hakeli, shilakabel sa'ed. What it says, Keshu Sesser was saying is the case, that he, gathers them to himself, that's the inner part of the keli. So we say, Keshu Sesser, when you're making these blessings, you draw down these Yeshuas from above. Not to learn, he takes them, but he also gathers them. So the keli is basically holding, containing within it. Primus hakeli is containing with it the energy. V'snatu tamanu b'chinas yayin hameshumer, which says the protected wine. Yayin meshumer sheishim vibrations. Protected wine. It's a higher level. That is atama that protects the wine. V'ashpa. Okay. V'ashpa v'agili zeh b'chinas chutzeis hakeli. And that's what it transmits and it reveals. No, v'snatu taman doesn't sound like it's chutzeis hakeli. Sounds like Chetzein Sekeh is the third thing. I'm just thinking here. I would think it's the three things: Natulon, Kanishlan, it's not that somebody protects it, it's not that preserves it. Okay, look, no, the bottom line is that the Kesher Successor does transmit blessings. Basically, he's saying from the Zohar, we see that it has an element that it contains, and then afterwards it transmits them.
It's custodians, that's it.
Huh?
That's
Yeah,
I was just concerned about the order in this area.
And now he's going to apply this to the difference between Malachim and Neshamis. And here it gets a little more complicated because we'll see Neshamis, their main thing is to receive, but they also are Mashpia. But their Mashpia is something that they receive. So he's going to say like this, that Neshamis, Malachim, it says in Kabbalah, the root of angels comes from Chetzein and Sakelim. And that's why he's going to say here, their main role is to be shluchei hashefa, They're being the external kelim containers. That's why their role is to transmit. Shamas souls, they come from primus kelim, so their main thing is to be a keli, a container for the divine, and that what they contain, that's what they must be to the world around them. That's what he's going to say now.
Even though the angels and the Kalim, they're mundane, they receive one from the other. You're saying the main thing is that
Yeah.
Yeah, because they receive that.
The main thing is that they transmit.
They're receiving.
They have to receive the deal.
That's the receiving is their penimus.
But
That's still their penimus. To receive from another. That's their penimus.
And this is the meaning behind when we say the root of angels is that they're from the outer level of the containers. Yeah, generally speaking. Let me just say one thing to explain this a little better. Because again, he's assuming that we already know a few things here. Just by saying Sherish Malach, saying Sekel. Think again from the perspective of how God created existence. So he wanted many things to happen here. There's the Kemuvan, obviously there's the main Kavanah. The main Kavanah is Dir B'Tachteinim. The main Kavanah is to take the lower part of existence and transform it into a home for the divine. Okay. But as we've been speaking at length, there's an interface of how that takes place. So to keep in mind all the time, he says it several times in the Maimorim before, that the interface has two roles. One is how God creates. He uses the interface to create. And then there's how we retrace our steps by using that same interface to go back. So it goes both directions. So in a sense, you could say the Creator uses the tools that we then use to reconnect existence back to the Creator. Actually, in Zohar it says, "Istako baraisa bara alma." God looks into the Torah and creates the world. But Barnash, Istako baraisa, asking baraisa, people learn Torah, b'kaimim alma, and they preserve the world. It's really essentially this idea. So the question, so God created a very elaborate existence, where generally speaking, it breaks down to a structure of mashpia and makabel. Things that give, things that transmit, and things that receive. That's generally Eris and Kalim. You know, you could say that's the Kav and the Rishimo. And obviously the higher worlds are more Eris, the lower worlds are more Kalim. As the energies get diminished, the Kalim emerge. That's why in Ak there's no Kalim. In Kudim there's one Kalim. In the Kudim there's 10, but they're still not coordinated. In Tikkun the energy gets diminished enough for there to be real unity. And the goal, of course, is all the way to bring it down. Then in our world, the earth is almost completely invisible, concealed. And we only see containers. And the goal is to recognize the earth inside these containers and slowly expand the containers until they are ready to receive higher and higher energy and climb the ladder all the way back. The classic example of Chassidus is the teacher and the student. Then a beginner student and an infinitely distant teacher in brilliance. So he has to first conceal his entire mind. And then he begins to spoon feed. That's the Kav. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. A, B, C, D. Slowly the mind of the student begins to hear letters. They make letters words. As the child grows, the containers expand, meaning the mind expands, and therefore could hear more ideas. And slowly climbs from Asiyah to Yitzirah to B'riyah to Atzilus, all the way to Ak, to the point where the student can equal and then surpass the intelligence of the teacher. This is the mashal given in Samach Vav right in the beginning. It really comes from Alter Rebbe in end of Vayikra. This example.
That's so hard going up.
See, the Al Rizal doesn't give an example of teacher and student. He just says Tzimtzum Kav. Chassidus Chabad, Alter Rebbe, gives this example, which of course makes it a lot easier to relate to. So you have an example for it. So when you look at this whole Shtalshlus, then everything has a place on this map. There are things that are more mashpia, there are things that are more makabel, and so on. So generally speaking, what's the role of malachim? Why did God put malachim into existence? So in Samach Vav he says, I think earlier in Ayin Beis he refers to, but in Samach Vav Beferish, malachim are part of the interface. God wanted to give us reminders of certain levels of godliness from higher levels. So he sent malachim, they're like messengers. Similar to how it is in Chumash, Pashat Pshut Mikra. Why couldn't God come to Avraham Avinu directly and say, I'm going to destroy Sodom? You're going to have a child. I'm going to heal you, etc. Because malachim are the shluchei hashpah. That's their role. Remember, let's get rid of the childish nursery school idea of an angel floating around with wings. An angel is a divine messenger. Basically, it's a divine energy in the form of a messenger. But they have a particular role. That's all their role is, to bring a message. That's why one malach doesn't do another job. Each one has their little thing. A neshama, his role is not just to be a messenger. A neshama is the embodiment of the divine plan. A malach is not an embodiment of the divine plan. Most malachim don't even necessarily know what the plan is. They may or they may not know. Doesn't matter. There are malachim that are even negative malachim. We have malachim that are malachim of klippa, So a malach's role is to fulfill, let's put it this way, in this big matrix, to fulfill a particular role in a particular time. That's what an angel does. One second. A neshama is coming to fulfill the purpose of existence. For example, a malach can't come into this world and change the material world. When they complained, and they were thrown down to the world, they became nephilim. The world they didn't have the power of a neshama. Only a neshama can come into this material world and not be overwhelmed by it. Even a neshama finds it difficult, but we have the power not to be overwhelmed. A malach does not have that power. Because a malach comes from chitzenis hakelim. Now what's chitzenis hakelim? Think of it. Chitzenis hakelim means it's the outer part of the purpose. The purpose is not them in themselves. They're only here. They're serving a role. It's like, think of a king sending his son to rule a country, or sending ministers to help govern, or to help bring a message. Sending a messenger, like Achashverosh sends the messengers are not the king. The messengers are coming to fulfill a particular role. So they're only, let's put it this way, a means to another end. That's called chitzenius hakelim. Pnimius hakelim in this context would mean the real purpose of it. Now, going back to kelim, you could say, well, one second, the purpose of me putting a cup with wine is for me to drink the wine. That's true, but not in Lamaila, that's not necessarily the case. That's because we function on a utilitarian level. The purpose above is not necessarily that you should drink the wine. The purpose is to contain elikus. And then, Mamela, that containing will also transmit. An angel only does transmitting of a message and a messenger, as a messenger. It's similar to what it says in the Rabbi brings in Chassidus sometimes, that the Jews, the kavanah is in the neshama itself. And the world is only here to serve. They say, b'shreishis b'shvil Yisrael, b'shvil HaTeva. This table, not this table, trees in the forest. God created them. But He did not create them as an end in themselves. He created them to be part of helping preserve the world. Let's say in nature you need to have trees. Also that the trees should be turned into something that can be turned into our Beis HaMikdash. It's things like that. So when we talk about neshama, the purpose is in itself. So kelim, chitzenius kelim, their purpose is to transmit. They're not in themselves. There's no kavanah in the malach per se. The malach is only here to bring a message, a real message.
Their main purpose is their chitzonius, though.
But I would say the other way, because their purpose is to bring a message that's not about them. Therefore, they're chitzenius. That's what chitzenius means. I think the best way to say it, means and ends. What's the means and what's the end? You commute on a train to go to work, right? The commuting is not an end. It's all because you have no other way to get there. So with commuting, I think this is going to be a good example. Commuting is a good example because it's a step. You have no way to get to your work, so you have to commute. One second. And your work is your purpose. The truth is, if you think of it, your work is also not your purpose. The whole reason you go to work is in order to serve the Eibishter. And to bring back what you create there to collect sparks. But all this is, you see, all the examples are all means to another end. Now here, for example, it says in Chassidus, and it says that the Rebbe brings it, that when they walk to the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash, that walking itself is an Aveda. Because in Kedusha, there's no such thing as means and end. Even the means is also an end. Even the chitzenius is also a primis, has a kavanah in it.
So going to work has an end by itself.
No.
No,
You can't say that because it's not the. Now you could turn it into with hashgacha pratis. You can turn it into something kedusha for sure. But on its own, it's on its own. Look, the fact is there are things that are called tashmisha kedusha and there's kedusha. Yeah, obviously, if you use all elam haza as tashmisha kedusha, it's a good thing. But you have to also know there's levels. Look. The Rebbe often brings with Havdalah, a Mavdil but Kedesh L'Chel, that through being Mavdil, you unite them. But it's not because Chel is like Shabbos. It's just that Chel could also be elevated by separating, by knowing this is holy, this is not. then you elevate the mundane to the holy. Chuln al taras hakedush. Okay, so anyways, the root of malachim is from outer containers, and they are shluchei hashefa. They're the messengers of the transmission. As we just discussed, since the outer part of the containers, like with the is in order to transmit outside of itself, therefore malachim. That's why they're shluchei hashefa. So if malachim came from Pnimis HaKelim, there would be a different role. Since their role is to be Shluchei HaShefa, they come from Chetzenis HaKelim, from the outer part of the container, which is transmits. And from the inner part of the containers is the root of the souls that are not messengers of a transmission. They are containers in their own. They are examples. Let's put it embodiments of godliness. This is the Shalom that says, I built for me a temple in order to rest in you. Not, if they were just Shluchei HaShefa, you could say, you know what? Jews are just messengers, and they're messengers, so why is it resting in them? The Beis HaMikdash actually is the messenger here. You build a Beis HaMikdash in order that God should rest in the Shamas. So in that sense, the building is actually like a shluchei shafa in this context.
Why wouldn't you say it like a teacher or something like that? The Rabbi is also the main thing is to transmit the stuff that's used, or what are you doing? You're in the class. Your main role here is to just give it over.
Well, that's. Are we talking about me?
Any teacher.
Nope.
Is that a question or
yes.
What's the question? I don't get it.
Yeah, you have some more that you're giving out to us.
Well, he's going to
role to me.
Well, no, but it doesn't say. He's going to say in a second from now that neshamas transmit plenty into the world. The question, however, is that the only thing that they have? An angel has nothing but a messenger.
His Pneumius doesn't count at all.
I wouldn't put it that way. I don't know about that. His Pneumius. His Pneumius is to be a messenger. That's his purpose.
You have to contain a message.
When he finishes the message, he's no purpose.
To be a messenger, you have to have a message. But you're saying that the main thing about him is not his...
No, but it's not his message. It's a message. I just gave an example. A king sends his son to rule a kingdom, or he sends ministers or messengers. Machashverosh sent messengers out to send the message to people. Mm-hmm. Those messengers are just at their role. That's it. When they finish their job, they finish their role. And the Neshama is the embodiment of the divine. Mm-hmm. He will be mashpia, but his main function is that he is the embodiment of the divine.
But maybe he's also...
Example I gave from the physical world is, think of everything that exists. Trees, minerals, vegetable, animal. Their purpose is not in themselves. Their purpose is to create a world like ours, and we're the ones that the purpose is within ourselves. Well, he's going to say this right now. He's going to say, "Ela b'seicham." The goal is rest in them. Uksiv mochin l'shivtecha pa'alta Hashem. Mochin, you've created a structure. What do we say? Mochin is a structure. The shiftecha, for where you should rest. Pa'alta Hashem. You Hashem have created, have shaped, have affected a home for your a structure for your resting place. Shaneshamas hein machan l'shifte is baruch. Neshamas are this resting place. Ubiridosam lamata in yonmu l'hayras elimus. And now he adds. Now these neshamas, when they come down to earth, their inyan is to radiate and to illuminate the worlds. Like it says, Ner Hashem, the flame of Hashem is the soul of the human being. The whole inyan of it is, for neshamas, is to radiate outside.
So it's back to the same thing really.
Hold on 1 second. Let's finish this inyan, then we'll discuss it. And this is because the neshamas come from the inner part of the container, Shalamayla. This is the key thing here. The Malachim, from the outset, their whole purpose is just to bring a message. Nothing in them at all. So therefore, they come from the outer part of the containers, which the role of the outer part of the container is to transmit, and that's what they do, they transmit. On neshama, the goal is in itself. When it comes down lamata, its purpose is to now illuminate. But it's not illuminating like a messenger is doing. It's illuminating with what it has within it in its own purpose, as he's going to say now. So he says,
What does that mean?
that because the neshamas come from the inner part of the kem, that's higher from the gili be'elamis. Before the neshama came to this world, I mentioned this last time, God created the world before Adam and Chava were created. There's a universe also. Clearly there's a transmission took place. But it was a transmission from Chitzeni Sakelim. There's existence. Neshamas are coming to change existence. They're not coming to create existence. They're not coming to sustain existence. That's what the regular Elokus does. That's the Dvar Hashem. That's our Mamoris. They should let there be light. That's like Malachim. That's to transmit that there should be an existence. The Neshamas are coming to elevate and illuminate this existence. So yes, it is their inyan is to elevate, but it's not their inyan is to put it there, is to change it. And as soon as they come from a deeper place, they have that ability to do that. And that's when the Neshamas are divine, because they come from the Pnimius. A Malach, you cannot call a Malach divine the same way, because a Malach is has an external purpose. Just like you can't call trees divine. A Malach is not a tree. A Malach is definitely a holier, and Malach Hashem is coming from a spiritual place, but is the equivalent of trees in Bria or Yetzirah. And because they are from the inner, that's why from that inner part, and they contain the divine, they are a reflection of that. That's why when they come down, they have the ability. They radiate, they illuminate the world. So malachim, angels, and the same thing with the Asar Mamoris, the words that God uttered, that is the Elokus divine that creates, or that transmits. What we say, neshamas now are already illuminating the world. We're not talking about it, that they're also bringing a message. They're bringing a deeper dimension, because they're bringing what they are, which is from the inner part of the Kalim, not the outer part. So, I mean, yes, it would have been more organized. I mean, I'm not challenging that Rebbe Rashab puts it this way, but technically you could have said like the Sheresh HaMalachim is from the Eir HaShayach LeElamis, like Mamala Kalam. That's Chitzenis HaKel. That's the root is Chitzenis HaKel. So Neshamis is from the Eir that's L'mayla Me'elamis. That's Primis HaKel. But that's essentially what he's saying. So this is so it's initially it can be confusing, because the bottom line you can say, what's like Neshamis transmit and Malachim transmit. We just said the outer containers transmit and the inner containers just contain. That's why it's get. But he's really we understand what he's saying here. But
it's because Ayin Lagayim, the Shams Yisrael, the whole topic is to be Ayin Lagayim, to transmit God's divine inspiration to the rest of the world. So basically, on the surface, we look like we have the same function as Malachim.
Is this a question or an answer?
Question we all have.
No, but I think
I explained it. I think.
Right. In order for us to be able to.
Does nobody get it? Do you want me to explain it again?
Yes.
No, I think in order for us to be able to do that, we're able to do that. We have the ability to do that because we are.
That's not what he says here, by the way. He says exact opposite, just for the record. That's what you're saying. First of all, he doesn't say Ner Lagoyim, and I don't like to bring something that doesn't say. He doesn't say Ner Lagoyim. Yeah, but Ner Lagoyim, he could have said that. The Rebbe Rashab knew that, possibly. Why didn't he say it?
What do you mean the Hayis the trees, the fact the trees?
So what, someone says, why didn't you use a pasuk? Why did you use his own lashon? Tell me.
I mean, attach the words.
So why didn't he? So he has no problem using psukim. Why does he have to say? I'm saying there's a kavanah in that. Be very careful, because there may be a reason he didn't say it. If he didn't say it, there's a reason. I can tell you that. That's for sure. You may not know the reason.
I want to listen.
I'm not here to answer that question. That to me is because I don't think that he's coming to say about Ner Lagoyim. That's not what he wants to say here. He's talking here about the general purpose. The way. So you want me to explain it again? You're saying okay.
I mean, I totally don't understand how things have purposes and when you can say. I mean, you even said Mamala.
Did you understand
it? It's Smithsonian. We always learn Mamala Kol.
I want to hear his question.
Where'd you learn that? No. Mamala Kalam enters into the Pnimius, but it comes from the Chitzenis. I gave a simple example, and I'll use the same example again. We do many things that are means to another end. We travel, commute to go to work. So even though you can use it l'shem shamayim, and you on your way to work you can learn, and you can meet somebody and say something nice, and you give charity, but it's still a means to another end. When God creates the universe, there are also means to other ends. There are things He put there in order to affect something else. Then there are things that are the end itself. The purpose is that. In the beginning of Chumash it says, "Bereshis b'shvil Yisrael b'shul HaTorah," that the whole world was created in order for the purpose of neshamas and purpose of Torah. So the world was put there for a reason.
No, you added the word neshamas this time, right?
No, I said both. B'shvil Yisrael b'shul HaTorah. That's what it says.
Oh, yeah.
In Rashi brings it.
Okay, so the thing is, so that's why you can say we're fitting is because
Exactly.
the purpose is just,
Yeah.
it's
So
about
the-
what we do.
Well, listen, you can just mess up your shlichus, but so the point is, in other words, so there are two types of entities in Seder Shtalshus. That's clear. Just for a moment, these two originate from two different places. One originates from the Chitzenius. Sometimes even says Chitzenius Haratzen, and one is Primus Haratzen. For example, you want a house. You want something. In order to get there, you have to hire people. So someone say to you, do you want to hire those people? You say, I have to hire those people. You don't need to, but there's no other way to build a building. So your Ratzon is really in the ultimate goal, the end. But to get to that end, you have to have a will. And how does Chassidus explain that this is outer will, this is inner will? So if someone asks you, why do you really want to have all these people sitting here and working? You say, well, the truth is, it's not I want them here, I want my house here. And this world, the only way to get there is to hire people. This is not dismissing their role, it's just defining what's the purpose, what means, what's an end. So in the language of Chassidus, this is coming from Chitzenius HaKelim, this is coming from Primus HaKelim. Or, as he says, one is Er HaShayach LeElim, this is coming from the energy that is relative to the world. And one is coming from air that's higher than the Elimus. That's the difference between the Neshamas and Malachim. Clear till here? Okay. Malachim's function stops right there. That's it. But we've defined there's a clear difference between an angel and a soul. Now there's another thing he's adding. This soul is now sent down to earth. This soul, that where the Kavanah was in the soul, is sent down to this world with a purpose. To bring that divine energy that it contains, which is as an end in itself, to change the world. So it is fulfilling a function, absolutely. But number one, it still would be an end in itself, even if it didn't come down to this earth. The neshama is still the kavanah, even if it doesn't come down to this world. You could say the ultimate kavanah, if it doesn't come down to this world, the neshama doesn't fulfill its ultimate purpose, because the nesava kadosh baruch hu, God wants a dir b'tachtenim. But you can't say the neshama is like a malach. It's still a neshama. It's a divine neshama b'shvil Yisrael, and Yisrael v'raisa v'kutcha b'richu kul echad, the one in the source. And now it comes down. So what does it do when it comes down? So that's one thing that's different than the malach. So even though it's also transmitting outside, but it's fundamentally a primus keli, not a chitzenius keli. A malach only has chitzenius keli. A neshama has a primus and a chitzenius. The primus is that it's a b'seichai, b'seicham, not b'seichai. The divine rests in the neshama. The chitzenius of it is that the neshama now takes that energy and transmits it outward to change the world. That's one thing. The second difference is that a neshama can change the world, and a malach can't change the world. A malach can bring a message to the world. God can the creation of the universe is not what a neshama does. A neshama comes and can change existence because a neshama comes because it has the divine within it as an end in itself. It has the power that when it radiates, it's not just bringing you a message; it transforms existence. So the only common denominator between a neshama and chitzenius hakelim is that they transmit. But the question is, what do you transmit? And whether you have something besides being a transmitter. And that's the key distinction. So there's really two things that distinguish a neshama from a malach. One, that it is an end in itself, a malach is not. Number two, because of that, it has the power to radiate and change the world, where a malach does not have that power.
Why is a malach?
Okay, is that, one second, is it clear now? Still not clear. Okay.
No, I mean,
I mean,
the only thing that the residents is that Hashem likes the neshama, even if it doesn't do anything. It's tiny from the neshama.
I wouldn't say that at all. That's where do you get that?
It's an end in itself. Having a neshama before it does anything. The neshama has to be an end for it to be a panemius. It has to itself without doing anything. Doing anything is an external thing. It's in itself. Itself is a panemius. Is a pleasure to God. You're talking about the inner part of is kind of.
Well, he doesn't use anything about pleasure to God here at all. He doesn't even refer to it. Here he's just saying.
He said the inner part of what's son, he just said, which is.
I said that, but here he says that it's just the previous kelim. It's shchanti b'seicham, that God rests among them, in them. Anyway, what do you want to ask?
So why do we look up at malachim much higher than men, neshamas? But in reality, we
Who says malachim are higher than neshamas? No one ever said that.
That's how we grew up.
As a matter of
We
fact,
can't destroy Sodom, or maybe Rabashkin could.
as a matter of fact, in Samach Vov, in Vayikach, Ish Beis Levi, Pasha Shmais, he asked this question. He says the opposite. Since neshamas are much higher than malachim, why do we b'chlal mention malachim in our davening? Kodesh, right? Exactly. He asked the exact opposite. The answer is because they bring a gilui, a certain gilui, that a neshama doesn't bring. Because neshama, remember, can be concealed in this world. A malach brings a gilui, a revelation to the world. You know, so malachim serve a certain role because they bring a certain revelation. That's yeah. No, it's a good question.
Are the neshamas mitzamsim the or that they this or atzmi that's from Pnimis Akedah? Because I don't understand. It says this or atzmi is l'mayla migili, but yet the neshamas themselves are meir this air, which is l'mayla migili. So to me that means if it was the same substance, it would still be l'mayla migili. So somehow the neshamas must be mitzamsim in order to be able to rebel this or atzmi this or I'm not sure how it works.
I was asking, since they're coming from such a high root, the neshama is the soul, that is. So how do they radiate into a world that's so much lower than them? You know.
How do they radiate light that, by definition, can't be radiated in this world?
This is a question that you could ask about anything. This is the whole purpose of existence. Forget about neshamas. The world. How does the world become a container for Mashiach? If it's a world that conceals the divine. The answer is that's the whole purpose of this whole of Chassidus in general. That we expand the containers of the world to make them kelim, containers for Elokus. So in the beginning they're raw and untamed, and through the avodah of a neshama in this world, we train the world to become a container for the divine. And when Mashiach comes, it says the divine will be revealed, and the world will not be annihilated. It'll be a true dir b'tach, a real home for the divine. So the way it's done is the neshamas themselves, remember, masquerade inside of a body. So they play the game of the rules of existence. That's the whole point. We forget the Torah that we learned when we were in our mother's womb and so on. So the neshama works with existence. Its purpose is to figure out how to train existence, to train the yesh to become a container for the divine. But a neshama has that power to be here. A malach would not have the power to be in a world like ours and maintain its integrity. A neshama has that power. And how we do it, that's how we all maneuver. You know, it's how you so-called infiltrate and sublimate and even fool the world to become a partner in, it's like how do you change your nefesh habamis to listen to your nefesh lakis when it's not interested in doing so. So I guess, I don't know there's one way to do it. It's everything we do. Sometimes you do it with love, sometimes you do it with tough love, sometimes because you teach, you know, we have ulterior motives. You give somebody, you say, hey, there's a lot of ways that the neshama figures out how to bring light into this world. It needs ingenuity. So I don't know if it's one particular way. It doesn't have to be through. The tzimtzum happens without the neshama's effort. The neshama comes down to this world with this atzmi, you don't see it. The fact is, if you saw it, the world wouldn't be the way it is. So the neshama has within it this powerful essence. That's why the world does not get burned up when the neshama comes down to this world, because it is concealed. The challenge is the other way around. How does the neshama start revealing its power? and it has the power. We can change the world. When you make a decision to do something selfless instead of selfish, you are changing the world. Your neshama is changing the world. Only neshama can do that. A malach can never do that. Because a malach is part of the wiring of existence. Only something from Pnimis HaKelim can have that power. But it is concealed. That's not. He didn't say it's revealed. He says it has the power to reveal. But on its own, it is concealed.
Okay.
As we see, the fact is we see it. Okay. So that's why, when it comes down, it is able to affect the world with the Ir Atzmi. That's an energy that's higher than the world's. I think I go back to one key line to keep remembering. To change something, you have to be outside of it. A system cannot change itself. Malachim and all the higher entities are all part of the system. A neshama is a entity that comes from the etzem. Right, exactly. But it comes down in a way more concealed than angels and everybody. It comes completely inside of a body concealed. But it has the intensity and the power from the etzem to change the system. Only a neshama can do that. A neshama, and it comes down to do that. But it's because the neshama comes from primus. It has that type of. It's one with that essential divine, where all the levels and ashtalshus don't have that. So it's like it's a two-sided coin in a way. Yeah. Bechira. Sometimes the words of Chassidus is elikus shenasa yesh. That a neshama is a elikus that became a yesh. A malach, you don't say nasa yesh. A malach is ayin. A malach always knows. It's another thing. A malach always knows its source. The interesting Chetzenis Kalim always is, because it's a messenger.
We call them Elohim sometimes.
Yeah, it's called the messenger. It always remembers the messenger. And Neshama could actually also do the opposite. But that doesn't mean it's weaker, because it's stronger, because it's more essential. The Masha Mamshich, Masha Nimshcha de Chetzenis Keli Rach Chetzenis Eir. Chetzenis Keli can only bring down the outer level of the Eir. Aval Primis HaKelim becomes Primis Yatzmis Eir. The inner containers, which is neshama is rooted there, they can bring also the inner and essence of the energy. Im Kenan neshama sheim bechinas Primis HaKelim, Arei mekablim bechinas Eir Atzmi. So if that's the case, the neshamas who come from Primis HaKelim, they receive an essential energy Eir. And through that, they transmit this energy also below to illuminate the world. And that's their whole purpose, is to radiate. But this is not this confused with the whole purpose of a Chetzenis Kelim, to radiate, to transmit. Because there, as I said, I made the distinctions. There, first of all, that's the only thing they have is to transmit. And two, they don't have the power to transform. They only have the power to transmit, and only transmit the outer dimension. So it would be a lot simpler if but this is for the thoroughness of the picture. The Rabbi Rasha was bringing the neshamas also into the picture. So yes, in the beginning we saw Pnimis HaKeli. The distinctions Pnimis HaKeli focuses primarily on just receiving and not transmitting. Chetzenis HaKeli is transmitting. Now he's talking about something that is Pnimis HaKeli that also transmits. So just think of it at different levels here.
So why does he say V'zeu kol inyanim lahor? It doesn't seem like it's an additional thing.
He said on the beginning also, if you look, B'yidadas Lamata inyanim lahor se elamis.
Right.
K'meshkas Hashem shekol inyan haneshamas u'rak lahor. Well, first of all, that's the fact that's where they are. In other words, the purpose of even though the divine is inside the neshama itself, it's not a means to another end. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that the purpose is to stay inside the neshama. The purpose is to bring it somewhere. But it's different than the other one. The other one is only to bring it, and they don't have anything of their own really that is essential. I mean, so it is an additional step. It's correct. The point is good. It is to transmit. That ultimately the goal is to transmit, but it's transmitting a primis dikair, not a chetzenis dikair. That's the difference between primis hakelim and chetzenis hakelim. Remember, at the end of the day, primis hakelim are still called kelim. In the physical example, you could argue that primis hakelim is only to contain and not to transmit, and chetzenis hakelim is only to transmit, not to contain. But when he gets deeper into it, he's basically saying that they both transmit, but it depends what they transmit. One transmits only the outer, the other one transmits the inner. That's really what it comes down to when you really, push comes to shove here, how he elaborates on this. Which is fine. I mean, it doesn't really change, it's clear what the point is. I'm saying, it would have been, listen, this is Ruchnis, we're not talking Gashmis. It would have been nice to just say one is one, one's not, but the fact is that the Neshamas do both. Huh?
The Neshamas have to transmit the highest level of the action. Transmit, so to speak, almost like saying transmits Atzmos, like really Atzmos. That's where it comes down to, the cargo.
Yeah, that's correct.
The statements are a little conflicting though, because on one hand you see he's a couple times he says it's Rak L'Kabel, and then he says Rak L'Hoyer. So even though you're saying that essentially, ultimately it's also to transmit, but the statements are like one hand he's saying is that the Pnimis Achilles whole thing is to be Makabel, and the other hand he's saying the whole purpose of the Kli is to transmit. So it's both the ultimate purpose of the Keli, I mean to receive and to transmit, or
That's what we asked before.
It's a good question. I would say the following. See, the words he uses here, right. That he says that rak shem kelim elikus. Now he's saying rak so kolin yonim lahoyer.
right.
So do you think kolin yonim lahoyer and rak shem kelim elikus is a contradiction? That's the question. I would say it's not. I know what you're saying. It sounds like it is, but I'll tell you why it's not. Maybe a good example is Eir Ein Sof itself. Is Eir. We talked the whole thing about Eir being Ayin. Is Eir L'Hoyer, or is Eir completely bottled to the Mire? Both. It's completely bottled to the Mire, and therefore it also is L'Hoyer. I'm not going to compare completely because this is Primis HaKelim and in the Sham it's not Mamish Eir. Because Eir, you could say, is but it's an example. It's an example. So I think what he's saying is like this. Because they're completely kalim to Elokus, and Elokus wants them to come and change the world. That's why they radiate. That's why they call Inyanim is to Lahoyer. But it's not calling Inyanim Lahoyer as if they have nothing of their own. Whereas with Shluchi Shefa, like a Malachim, also calling Inyanim is only to be a transmitter, a messenger. But there's nothing. They're not kalim. They're not Eir Ein Sof and bottled to the etzim in the same way. They're like an entity chosen for a mission, and then it's over with. I would say that's what it is. So it does have both components to it. He doesn't explain it that way, doesn't spell it out, but it seems to me that's what he's saying, because it can't be there's a contradiction from the top to the bottom. I think it comes down to is that, that's why you have to start from the top. Neshamas are kelim telekus, malachim are not. We got that clear. Now, kol inyanam is to bring that elikus into the world. Why? That's what's going on here.
A good example would be just to add on what you said before, like a king who sends his son, because he's the whole embodiment of the message, therefore ultimately he's meant to give the message over to where he's sent.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because the son
Because
is really the king.
Right.
Therefore, the people will accept him where they won't accept messengers as good as they will accept the son. Therefore, when a person brings in Paninius to himself,
What's
he brings godliness.
I'm asking if that would be a good example.
A little partly. I would say one more thing. Remember, there's another thing. He doesn't say neshamas are here. He says neshamas are primis hakeli, from primis hakeli. Keli, by definition, has two elements. He said here. The essence of a keli is to contain, but there's also the keli is to transmit, like drinking the wine. So, malachim we have covered. Malachim achitzein kelim. Their thing is mainly to transmit. Now, what about neshamas? Let's, for argument's sake, say neshamas didn't radiate out. They didn't illuminate. So what would be their purpose? What would be the sitting there with wine inside of them? That's not their inyan. The fact that they're giving out, their whole purpose is to give, doesn't mean that they're not primis hakel. Instead, it doesn't mean they're not kelim felakus. To say they transmitting is not a contradiction to being a kelim felakus. You can be a transmitter without being an inner container, but being an inner container doesn't mean you can't transmit, or you aren't transmitting. So it is subtle, but there are two levels here. I mean, let's put it at the end of the day, if you really think of it, you could have to say, a malach is the outer is here, and the neshama is here. Both are part of the same keli. Pnimis and Chetzenis keli means it's one container that has an outer and an inner. The malachim, their role is only to give outward. A neshama is an inner thing that holds a lakus in it, and it's also its inyan is going to give out. But it's giving out a whole different energy.
If they're
And the neshama has an interface.
Like I said
that's
before,
godlike, has
like
to be
I
so
said before,
godlike.
a barrel has to be conducive to contain wine. The thing you pour the barrel out of doesn't necessarily have to be conducive.
What if the neshama is the
The neshama- so, because a barrel, one second, a barrel will preserve the wine in it. Let's just use that example. Barrel will preserve the wine. If the barrel is not proper, if it's not wood, if it's metal, the wine will turn into vinegar. The barrel contains wine, and the barrel, the primis akeli is a keli for the primis air clip. Now comes the time you're going to take the barrel and put it into cups. Everyone's going to drink. That's the role of that may be the role of that's already like more or less the malach. You know that malach doesn't have to be the barrel. A neshama is the wine coming from the barrel straight into our reality. That's how I would say is. So they, you know.
It has to have a very godlike interface as a keli of the neshama.
Yeah.
It has to be an interface with Atzmos. That's it, which is what we've been learning the whole sefer.
Yeah, correct, absolutely. I think it'll become clearer as he goes along and explains it more. But we learned this last week, but we didn't go into, you see, when you start learning it a second time,
I'm not trying something. There are really two which are four. There's content and there's distribution.
Good.
The content is different in the shliach and in the neshama. The content of the neshama is the content of the shliach, a message.
Atzmi or shaykh le'ilmus, okay.
And the distribution is to have two different effects. One to deliver something over here, the mala, and the other to change the world.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah. So Pnimis HaKeli has a deeper content and power to transform, and Chetzenis HaKeli has a lesser content and it's to transmit. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I think those are the key words: transform and transmit.
Yeah, yeah.
Only neshama can transform.
Because it has that, right? But both of them, no, but the real challenge we were having is the fact that it was going outward. You know, it would have been nicer if the neshama just stayed self-contained and just keeps its energy
No, I think
within.
that answers everything. Because they don't both transmit. One transforms and the other transmits.
Because it's
But he uses the word, but he
Because
uses
it's
the
God.
word to say
The
it.
neshama is God. The neshama is God like God. That's it. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Another one you can say, if it's tachlis, if it's God itself, then why does it have to be meir? He's going a step further. Then it's showing that something else is.
The confusing thing is, and I think it's critical because he's talking about kalim here at the end of the day. So you know, like let's argue the other way about where's the messenger? Where's the messenger container? It's Chetzenis HaKeli. Doesn't really talk about him as a keli. Well, he's a keli simply because he's taking the message, he's carrying the message. Mm-hmm. But it's a very external part of he's not carrying the essence of the king. Right. He's not carrying the essence of God, he's carrying a message of his.
Right. The sun is
so he is a keli, he's external part of it. That's why I used before that I think the barrel is a very important point, because the whole point that he wants to ultimately, explain is how Eir and Keli meet. Mm-hmm. The Pnimis HaKeli is much more similar to the Eir than Chetzenis HaKeli is. A malach is not a dugma, B'Tselem Elokim. A malach was not created in the image of God. A malach is like I said, like all the daimon Tzameach Chai were created by God, but they're not image of God. They're not reflective of the inner. So they don't, the interface part, they don't carry the divine personality. So an angel carries a divine message, but not the divine personality. And the neshama carries a divine personality. But it does carry it, and it's meant to come and transmit it, and therefore it transforms.
The shluchim of the Rebbe are much higher than shluchim, though. Really, they're much higher than message.
Shlucha shalom kameshe.
Yeah, that's a difference.
Yeah, but the Rebbe brings, the Kutta Teiri says that anything outside of Atzmus is a shliach. Because anything that's already another level is a shliach of Atzmus to carry. B'dakus, subtly speaking, you can say the difference in a malach and a neshama is the difference in yesh and eir. Remember you said before, kelim are not dvekus nikeres. You know, kelim also come from the divine, but you don't feel their connection. Neshama. I wouldn't compare it exactly because neshamas also don't feel the connection, but But Primis and Chetzenis Keli is like two levels of how. But the bottom line is, a neshama is a reflection of the God's personality, divine personality, and the malach is not. The messenger can be with that, the one that's not. Shluchah Shalom Kamesi is an interesting question, because if malachim are shluchim, then they're Shluchah Shalom Kamesi. But they're not. They're not. So then you can't say a malach is a shluch, is kamesi of the mishalech of Velikus. He's only kamesi of one part. Like for example, why can a malach not do two shlichus? Because Gavriel is gvura, Mechal is chesed, Rafal is teferes. Chesed is not gvura. Chesed can't do the job of gvura. Chesed Atzilus is not in the divine image. All of Atzilus, the Adam, is the divine image. So a malach is not Atzilus. A malach is in Bria. But a malach is similar. It's one dimension of the divine sending a message. So it's Chetzenis HaKelim, relatively speaking. Neshama also encompasses, when Neshama encompasses the whole purpose. There's no malach that can do the whole purpose. Huh?
It's no one dimension.
That's why it says, when the Eibishter by Mitzrayim, he says, Lo anihu v'lo malach v'lo saraf. He didn't send any message. I did it myself, because the only way to transform was that you have Atzmus itself. A malach can't transform. Like the famous story with when they made the cherem on the Alter Rebbe. So they came to what's his name? Forgot his name. It'll come to me in a minute. So they asked him to join the cherem, to join the excommunication, and he said he didn't want to. So they said, but the Malach Hashem, which was the Gra, they called the Gra a Malach. He himself said so. He said, yeah, very nice, but it says when it came to the Akedah, so the Eibishter sent a Malach. The Eibishter himself told him to do the Akedah. But when it came to stop the Akedah, right, he sent a Malach. So he says, a Malach is good to stop an Akedah. But the Akedah itself, you have to send the Eibishter himself. So the Grov may be a Malach, but in other words, to stop, not to do it. I'm real Hargenam, it's in das. Yeah.
They said the Grov was the one who wouldn't sign the cherem.
No, he won't.
No, it wasn't the Grov.
He was the initiator of the cherem.
Oh, he's the initiator.
One of the initiators, yeah.
He was Makabel Lashon Hara. That was another the lick.
Yeah. So anyway, וגם השפוס הגשמי שלנו הוא כדי להמשיך על ידי זה גילי אלוקות בעולם. He's going now a step further, that even the hashpos gashmis from the neshama, the physical transmissions, is also in order to bring elokus, to reveal divine in the world. Kamei Avram Avinu olav Hashem shei meichel mashke lechol afil arvim. Like Avram Avinu Shalom, that fed and drank, gave drink, food and drink to everyone, even to Arabs. And through that he publicized Elokus.
The thing you said doesn't say it anywhere here. Isn't this like part of it?
What?
Before you mentioned that in like you said it doesn't mention it.
Since he doesn't, the Rebbe Rashab doesn't use the Lashon, there must be a reason.
No, I know, not that Lashon, but I'm saying this affecting even out of it.
Okay, so why does he use the word? Tell me, you have to give me a reason. He forgot there's such a person.
No, I mean the concept, I don't mean exactly the words.
But why doesn't he use it? He uses psukim all the time. Why doesn't he use that word? It's mamash pasuk. I'm just wondering. I'm asking you. He doesn't use it so blatant that he doesn't use it. But he doesn't. But it's a pasuk. He uses b'shachanti b'seichem b'machal l'shivtecha. Why didn't you just use that expression? Let me ask you. Clearly, because he wants to say something bigger than that, maybe. Because he's not just talking about goyim. He's talking about the Welt. I'm not saying it's a contradiction.
No, but this line doesn't say that.
You keep going in circles. Why does he have to be monogamous? Why can't he say it? Do you think that Rebbe Rashab didn't know the pasuk? Is there a reason he didn't say it or not? Do you think? What do you tell me?
Absolutely.
So what's the reason? That's what I'm
wondering. There, right? To affect the world.
The world and goyim is not the same thing to me. Goyim is a specific part of the world. The world is much bigger than just goyim. That's the practical.
I don't know why.
You say not only the inhabitants but also the physical aspects of the world.
Yeah,
I don't know why we have to go there. If he wants to talk about it, he would have said. I mean, why are you insisting?
What is he made of?
Huh?
If it's not a thinking creature, what is he made of?
What do you mean? When we take a piece of food and we elevate it. I mean, the whole period of Elam Hazard, the whole refinement of the physical world.
The heart, the thing that's the most important is the thinking creature.
Who said that? I never.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I see he's going in another direction.
Why do you say that? I mean, Adam and Chava had no thinking creatures except them. Why were they sent to Earth?
You just got the ball rolling.
No, I'm saying, what do you base this on? To me, Dir B'Tachtena means the whole material world.
And what's most difficult and most important is the...
So, but that's another discussion. I don't know if it's relevant here. Why is that relevant
What?
here? I don't know what's most important. Who says? Maybe Chalka Ba'elam, maybe the material things in your possessions are most important. There was a time Jews didn't have interaction with Goyim. What they do? Moshe in the Midbar for 40 years. I mean, the Jews at the time of the Beis HaMikdash.
We're the culmination of everything, so everything has to be touched now.
I mean, why are we insisting on going? Why do we? Huh?
It was just growing, and here we're
No,
the
it's included in this. I didn't say what you're saying is a contradiction. I don't see, but I don't. To me, limiting it to that is not what he wants to do here.
5 minutes before you're coming and helping. That's
You're saying affecting creation, not the
That's what Pashto is what he's saying.
creatures, the creation.
The Eretz Ha'elam, he says it several times. And there may be even a reason why specifically not using that language. Which is, but really is why I'm not going there. If he wanted to use it, he would have used it. Maybe there's a reason he doesn't want to use it. Okay, so even like it said, like he would tell them, the Arvin, the people, the guests that he would have. He says, bless the one that you ate from his. So basically, even when a shama comes to mata, even when it transmits physical things, food, it's also to reveal divine. This was the whole inyan of Avram Avinu, was to transmit and to transmit the divine elikus, divine revelation into the world. Like it says in Medrash, that Avram came and he began to illuminate. But this illumination is coming from Primis HaKelim, and therefore, as we spoke, it's an inner dimension of the divine, and it transforms, and it changes the world. The inyan of this is to understand this more further. Primis HaKelim and the outer are like the difference between names. When we give things names, there's a Shem HaTayar. In Hebrew, there's a few ways you can give something a name. There's a Shem HaTayar, there's a Shem HaEtzem, there's a Shem HaTayar, there's a Shem HaKinui, there's a Shem HaPu'ula.
what things?
He's talking about 3 here, but usually there's 4. Shem HaEtzem, I'll just explain it. Shem HaEtzem is this thing itself. You say something is a table, a shulchan, Moshe. That's a Shem HaEtzem. It doesn't speak about your pu'ulas, your activities, your functions, your personality, your skills. A Shem HaTayar, even though he's not talking, I don't think he says Shem HaEtzem here. Shem HaTayar is a description of you. Again, of you. Moshe is a man, a Jew, so on. A Shem HaPu'ula is saying you're a carpenter, you're an artist, you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're a businessman, you're a swindler. I don't mean you.
Listen, I'm gonna bend the middle.
But first of all, nobody knows. Okay. You're a musician. Hashem Akinui is a nickname. You're cute. Meishaleh. You know? Or they would say the Geller, the Bräuner, the Schwarze, the Heche, the Niedriger. You know, the tall one, the short one.
The Neville.
Yeah. The Poyer.
Neville.
Yeah. You know, Yankel Pischer. After they came out of Russia, they found them in Germany, and they had a shingle that said Hans Spritzer. And it came to France, it says Jacques Lafontaine. So the guy said to him, so Yankel gewonnen Hans, Pischer gewonnen Spritzer, then from Hans gewonnen Jacques, and Lafontaine is the Pischer gewonnen Lafontaine. In America, he's called Jack. Anyway, so names change, but Kinui is more like a nickname or a description of something unique about that person. So these names reflect different elements of an individual, and that's what we're going to discuss now in that context of how we name things. We already alluded to earlier that the etzem of a keli, the mahus of a keli, is to contain. That's like Shem HaToyar, Shem HaEtzem. The name of the pu'ula of a container is to drink from, is to transmit, is to pour from. So, a cup is both. This really explains it because it's not a contradiction. It depends what you call, what you're identifying. The thing itself, its functionality, etc., etc. So he's going to explain this now with the names. Shem HaToyar, Shem HaKinu, v'HaPu'ula. So here he brings three. Shem HaToyar means matayar something. You're describing it. So you say a wall, a white wall would be a Shem HaToyar. A hot sun. Shem HaKinu is already the nickname. HaPu'ula is its function. Ukidu adin Hashem is b'chlal zeh b'chinas hakelim.
Names of God are similar, no?
Yeah. It says in the Medrash that a God is called by his function. When he's a warrior, he's called Tzvakas. When he's Baal Chesed, he's called Kale. When he's Gvura Din, he's Elikim. But he'll probably, anyways, he says, but he begins with one important line. How is that relevant to us? Is because Shemis are Kalim. Ki yidu adin, Hashem is b'chlal zeu k'bechinas haKalim. So it's not just he's giving an example. The Kalim of Atzilus are actually Shemis, their names. Zeu b'chinas haKalim, Kamaimer, Yishtar Kul Shema. Like it says, I think it's in Tikkun Ezeiah, that when the energy leaves the container, what's left? Yishtar Kul, they all remained just their names. So you see Kalim, it's referring to a Kalim. When the Kalim are devoid of energy or it's not revealed, they're just called names. And these Kalim, these names have two levels. In general. For example, you call somebody Ish Chacham Muflag, a person who's a tremendous Chacham, tremendously wise person, Muflag. Tremendous wisdom. Nikra b'shem Chacham Gadol. So he's called a very wise person. This is a Shem HaToyar. This is describing the person as a very wise person. We're not speaking about a particular idea or concept that he shared. You're calling the person a Chacham. You could say a person said a good Chachma. Dafki is a Chacham. Even a non-Chacham once in a while says a Chacham. Like they say, even a broken clock is correct twice a day. Actually, he's not even saying an idea. We're not talking about the particular chachma, the wisdom and seichel inside the container of his mind. What he already learned, what he received already, and what he learned and what he received, a lot of wisdom and das.